Good evening, fellow collectors. Welcome to the brand new channel, Graphzilla Sports. For those of you that are carryovers from Tic-Tac-Go, that channel is still going to be active, still tons of great content. This, however, is the new place to come to learn all things autograph related and sports related. A couple things that I'm going to walk you through today. Obviously, we know there's different ways that you can obtain autographs for fellow collectors out there. There's always in-person autographs, there's paid signings, and there's through the mail autographs, TTM. So what I'm going to do today is kind of talk to you guys a little bit about how I got into the hobby, how you can also send out TTM requests yourself and get free autographs through the mail. Stay tuned, because we're going to get right into it here. Okay, so a couple of high-level basics here, right? Number one, you want to get a player's autograph, either a current player, ex-player, retired, or even a Hall of Famer. First thing you need is TTM fuel. Fuel is basically what are the items that I'm actually going to send out to the player to get their autograph, right? So what I typically do is I'll visit a lot of my local, garage sales, antique shops, flea markets. I'll look for kind of, simple base cards, nothing too expensive, and just kind of buy in bulk, right? Trying to get as many cards of different players as I possibly can to send those out for autographs, right? Now, the thing that you have to remember is when you're sending out through the mail autograph requests, you may or you may not get a response. So one of the most important things to do is make sure you have some material that you can actually send out to get signed, right? Like I mentioned, one of the things that I do is I go locally, I find cards in bulk, I send them out. What's important and really noteworthy here is that you never want to send out an item to get signed that you can't afford to lose or replace, right? Because no response is going to be guaranteed. You're rolling the dice. Sometimes you catch a player on a great day and they sign. Sometimes they're going to send back a rejection, return your item. Sometimes, they're going to just easily sign it and it's an easy success. It really is across the board. Signing habits change a lot over the course of time. There's some great resources I'm going to share with you guys that you want to check out. One of them is sportscardforum.com. It's a great resource that kind of gives you some idea of current and former players' signing habits, how likely they are to respond. Collectors can actually track through that website when they send out requests and when they actually received a response back. So it's an awesome tool. It'll give you a comprehensive percentage of how likely you are to get something back signed. Great resource guide. Even better resource is sportscollectors.net. This is an awesome resource. We talked about, in-person autographs, paid signings, and through the mail. This site has it all. Basically, it's going to give you, again, a comprehensive archive of who's signing through the mail, what the addresses are, who's posting successes or failures from that respective sports star. It also has some great opportunities to announce paid private signings where you can actually send in items to a promoter and they will get them signed for you. There's obviously always a fee with that, but if there's certain gems or guys that you just can't get through the mail that won't sign for you in person signings is the way to go. So it's a great resource to have all this information literally available at your fingertips. Okay, so you may be asking yourself, how do I exactly write a through the mail request or a letter of request? We're going to kind of walk you through what that process looks like. I'm going to draft up a sample letter here. You see the card of Mr. Mike Mussina, Hall of Famer for the Orioles and the New York Yankees. We will actually roll through a sample here so you get a better idea of what to say in your letter. You want to make it genuine. You want to make it heartfelt. I highly discourage typing up letters, changing the name, and just sending them out en masse. Players see right through that. I've had folks before write back and say, hey, thank you so much for handwriting your letter. It was a thoughtful letter. Really appreciate you reaching out. That stuff goes a long way with a player. So you never want to cut your chances short by typing out a letter or making it look like you're mass producing and just trying to get a bunch of free autographs, right? You actually want to show that genuine connection to that player you're writing to. So as far as your letter of request, right, some of the basic components is obviously address the player properly, right? Mr. Mussina or Mr. Mike Mussina. If you feel the need, you could just call him Mike, I guess, right? But I still kind of very respectful, always kind of operate from a method of addressing the player properly, right? So basically starting off the heading correctly, you want to talk a little bit about what you witnessed in their career, right? Or what you thought was great about them, right? As I grew up kind of in the 80s and 90s, and I still follow baseball today, was a huge fan back then as well. I remember Mike Mussina always, pitching against the Detroit Tigers because I'm from Detroit, and going the distance, right? Going 9 innings, throwing tons of complete games, being a very mainstream pitcher that would typically win more than he lost, right? So he is definitely a Hall of Famer. He's won nearly 300 games in his career. Awesome ERA, tons of strikeouts, and really contributed to some meaningful teams there in the 90s. So you definitely want to highlight that in your letter. All right, so we've written our letter. We've talked a little bit to Mr. Mike Mussina about how we really enjoyed watching him pitch in the majors, especially for me growing up in the 90s. Also planted a few questions about, what his best memory in baseball was, any specific memories pitching at old historic Tiger Stadium before it closed in 1999. Because I remember him pitching all the time throughout the 90s and beating the Tigers quite a bit. And then lastly, you want to make sure you explicitly ask him to please sign the item if you wouldn't mind doing so, right? So it's very important to just not assume, but to call out that request and to do so politely as well. Now there is a $10 per card donation that Mr. Mussina does charge for his signature. I found that information on sportscollectors.net and sportscardforum.com. So again, always do your research before you send out your letter, because you just never know who's a good signer, who's not, who has certain fees or things that they require. So if you want to make sure you get this card signed, be sure to enclose the appropriate donation. And right now we're actually going to address the envelopes correctly. That way we'll get our item back to us. All right, so this first envelope is obviously going to be the actual envelope that contains the letter that you just wrote, the card or cards that you're requesting to be signed, as well as a self-addressed stamped envelope, meaning that this is going to be the envelope that comes back to you. So as an example, Joe, and here's my, you would put your return address. You're going to make sure there's postage on both, right? One stamp to get out there, one stamp on this envelope to come back to you. That's kind of what we call a self-addressed stamped envelope, right? You're having the return come right back to you. It's going to contain, hopefully, your signed items, and it's going to make its way back to you with no problem. So again, we've got the letter, we've got the card. We're going to have to include the $10 donation, right? Because that's what Mr. Mussina charges. And then also the envelope to send out to and a return envelope as well. After that, you pretty much have everything that you have together. What I would always encourage you guys to do as well is I kind of keep a log of who I send out to, the date I sent out my letter of request and my items, and then hopefully the date that they come back, just to kind of keep track and kind of see who actually signs and who doesn't. Kind of a fun project, right? And like I said, just so you guys know, you're not going to get responses every single time. So again, do not send something out that you can't afford to lose or not have come back. But this is what makes getting the mail each day fun, right? Rather than bills or something boring in the mail, hopefully you get to add some autographs to your sports collection from some of your favorite stars. So Graphzilla Sports, again, is going to be about all things autograph, all things sports related. The name Graphzilla obviously comes from my love of autographing, right? It's about getting in-person signings, at the ballpark or at the stadium. It's about participating in paid signings, whether they're in person or through the mail. And lastly, these through the mail autograph requests, which make getting the mail each day super exciting because you never know what's coming back, right? So again, hopefully you guys found this really useful. I wanted to kind of just create this introductory video to kind of introduce you guys to the art of TTM autographs and how you can hopefully get some really cool additions to your collection for players that you may not see in person more regularly. And just kind of encourage you guys to take a stab at it, right? Take a chance, see what comes in. It's a super addicting, super exciting hobby. Relatively expensive in the long term, right? Because you're buying postage, you're buying envelopes. Some players request donations. So it's not always a hobby for everybody, but if you space it out and you really focus on who you really want to add, hopefully it'll be a fun new adventure for you guys. Want to remind you guys also to please go ahead and like and subscribe and share this video. Really appreciate it. Again, coming from the Tic Tac Go channel, Graphzilla Sports now has an identity and a channel of its own. So we're going to really focus on all things autograph related, sports related, really to kind of focus on that niche so that, for that content that you guys enjoy, you're going to get notifications, every step of the way once I post a new video and once I have something to update. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. As my old saying goes, hope your mailboxes are good to you as hopefully they will be good to me as well. So enjoy. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Make sure you like and subscribe, and hopefully you'll hear from me again soon. Thanks, guys. Take care.